Millennials, young folks in their 20s and early 30s having an unusually tough time in this economy. You might think they're entitled, but they happen to be the future of this country. I'll tell you how to make things work with them. This is Real Money. You are the most important part of the show. So join our live conversation for the next half hour on Twitter at AJRealMoney, at Ali Velshi, or on Facebook.com/AJRealMoney. The millennial generation is America's future, but the so-called millennials, people between about 20 and 34 years old, appear to be having a harder go of it in today's job market. Despite being the highest educated group in history, the U.S. Labor Department reports that 9.1% of Americans in that 20 to 34 age group who want a job couldn't find one in January. That's almost 3 percentage points higher than the national unemployment rate of 6.6%. It's more stark for those millennials who are first joining the workforce out of college, those aged 20 to 24. 11.9% of them couldn't find a job in January. Now, pesky as they may seem, we all have some millennials around, either in your house, in college, sucking your bank account dry, at home, lounging about, or working alongside you. You'll recognize them. They wear the earbuds at work. Like past generations of young people, millennials get painted with contradictory stereotypes. According to a poll by Bentley University, and there are many of these, but we like this one, 70% of those in older generations believe millennials aren't willing to, quote, pay their dues in order to move up in the workplace. The rap on this generation is that it feels entitled and lacks commitment. Yet many millennials say they don't expect to stick around long enough in a job or a career to move up the corporate ladder the way older generations have done. They don't think that corporate America hires you for life anymore, and they'd be right. The stereotypes about millennials miss a larger point. Today's millennials are coming of age in a world of disruptive technology and freelance workers. Recent college graduates now realize that they paid a lot for an education that doesn't necessarily guarantee them a lucrative job. The seismic economic shifts that were occurring just as this group entered the workforce during and after the recession have changed the rules. Millennials have been forced to adapt, but stereotypes persist. Hiring managers say today's young workers lack necessary skills, and that's why job openings go unfilled. But that's a little more complicated than it appears to be. Today on Twitter and Facebook, I've been asking you, what can millennial workers in their 20s and early 30s do to improve their chances in this job market? ATX787 tweets, study a foreign language. Smaller firms are going global faster than ever before. Good job prospects. And Pete on Facebook says, position yourselves in the hot, sustainable fields like technology, especially security and healthcare. I want you to tell me what you think by tweeting me at Ali Velshi and at AJRealMoney, or leave us a comment on Facebook. Now, the debate that's currently raging about the existence of a skills gap is not just about millennials. According to the latest Manpower Talent Shortage Survey, 39% of U.S. employers are having difficulty finding staff, any staff, who have the right skills. Well, many stereotypes abound about millennials. They are lazy, they're entitled, they're spoiled. But Brad Karsh, a management and leadership trainer who's coached thousands of millennial workers, say they are no better or worse than past generations. They can actually bring a lot to the conference table. Brad is the co-author of Manager 3.0, a millennial's guide to rewriting the rules of management. His firm, JB Training Solutions, also works with Fortune 500 companies as well as small businesses. Brad, good to see you.
Great to see you, Ali.
What explains this increase, the higher rate of unemployment amongst these so-called millennials?
You know, I don't think it's a millennial thing. I think it's a job market thing. And when you think about it, sometimes it's more difficult for entry-level people to get jobs at any time during our economy because they don't have skills, they don't have background, they don't have necessarily the experiences that some employers are looking for.
Right.
So as a result, it's just a little trickier because we're still not totally out of this recession and the job issues we've been facing.
Before I ask you whether you've worked with these people and you've worked with companies who have to hire them, and that's an imperative because they're a very large part of the workforce and they are the future of the workforce,
right.
So one of us is going to have to figure it out. Either we older ones are going to have to figure it out or the kids are going to have to figure it out. Before we get down to what their characteristics are they homogenous enough as a group to even have characteristics?
You know, anytime you try and generalize an entire generation, you're going to run into some risks. And you could look at millennials and say, listen, I know a millennial who's not lazy, who's not entitled, and that's absolutely true. But I do think every generation, millennials, Xers, boomers, and beyond, there are certain core characteristics that a majority of the people into that generation may have skills at or may have attributes at, and that's what I think we see in a lot of millennials too. So there are some of those.
Why do we think they're entitled? I mean, they're highly educated. They do want to do well in this world. Is that different from any other generation?
Well, I'll tell you what. We love, as older generations, to pick on the new generation.
Right.
And I do a funny thing in one of my workshops where I read the Time magazine from this past May that said they're entitled narcissists, and then I show a magazine from Time magazine in 1990 that said Gen Xers were narcissists and entitled, and then I show one from 76 that shows how baby boomers were entitled. So we like to do that. We like to pick on 20-year-olds.
Right.
I show a cave drawing that shows the same thing.
Right.
So I think a lot of us come in a little entitled. I do think millennials are a little more entitled, and one of the reasons is looking out around us. So when I started working way back in 1988, and I looked up in the corporate world and sort of saw our business icons, I was looking at Jack Welch, I was looking at Warren Buffett, I was looking at old, rich white men.
Right.
I didn't know a 25-year-old self-made billionaire. Now they look out and they see that. And it's almost like in their minds, it's like, Mark Zuckerberg is smart. He had a good idea. When he was 25, he was a billionaire. I'm smart. I have good ideas. I'm 25. Shoot, why can't I run that assignment? Why can't I handle that project? The rules have changed.
So who changes? Does their behavior need to change to say it's not the way the world works, or does ours need to change to say maybe they've got reasons to be a little more entitled or have greater expectations?
I'm going to cop out and say both. I mean, I really think it's about meeting in the middle, and that's what I talk about in the book and in the workshops that I deliver. It's all about meeting in the middle. We need to understand them better, and they need to understand us and the realities of the business world,
What
too.
would you say we need to understand better about them? So if you're managing them or you're working with them, what's the thing you have to get over? More than get over, you want the best out of them.
Right,
what do you have to do to get the best out of them?
Well, here's what I talk about. It's 50% that we're getting old and we forget what it's like to be 22, but the other 50% is that they're real, meaningful, powerful, profound differences. And they relate to things like technology, parenting, culture, society. And to me, the parenting one is a big one. They were raised in a very different era with very different parenting values. And as a result, they grew up being told that they were very special because that's what their parents told them. It wasn't their fault. So as a result, they come into the workplace and they might have an inflated self-confidence, a little bit of that entitlement. And I think for us to understand where that comes from, that's what's important. Where does it come from? It's not inherent within them. It's what they've learned and what they've known.
Does that make them less of a decision maker or less like previous generations who are out there to make it on their own? These kids financially, for some reasons, stay home a little longer. Do they consult with their parents and sort of have their parents involved in their decision making a little longer?
Dramatically different relationships with their parents, very different from ones. They consider them their friends. We considered our parents our adversaries, right? Get away from me, mom and dad. They're like, hey, I'm hanging out with my mom and dad. So they do consult their parents. Again, not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's the way that it is. And they are more collaborative. You sort of mentioned that. So they're used to more clubs, more teams, more activities, more partnerships. And as a result, when they get into the workplace, they think more in terms of that collaborative nature as opposed to our generation, which was command and control.
And you and I come from similar environments. You were from the advertising world, like the journalistic world. People come in, they're young, they get bullied and told what to do, and they work their way up. These kids want more explanations than we grew up demanding from our seniors.
Exactly. So they grew up with so much more structure. Again, more clubs, more activities. Free time from Gen X, I'm a Gen Xer, to millennials is down 37%. So what that means is that when they grew up, they looked up. And there was a coach, a teacher, a volunteer, a parent, a chaperone, and someone told them exactly what to do. And now they come to work and they want someone to tell them exactly what to do because that's how they were raised. We weren't raised that way. We did more stuff independently. We hate people telling us what to do. So that's where I see a lot of tension in the workplace.
Very interesting. It's a good book. Brad, a pleasure to see you as always. Brad is the president of JB Training Solutions and author of Manager 3.0, a Millennials Guide to Rewriting the Rules of Management. Great to see you, Brad.
Thanks.